The reason you feel like you're failing at life is not necessarily because you're lazy or broken. It's because you're trying to drive on a highway that you're still busy building with your own bare hands. We've been sold this massive, crushing lie that there's a universal timeline for success and maturity and happiness. And so you look at the people around you, like your colleagues and your friends, and you see them moving through life with a sense of ease that feels like kind of like a personal insult. They seem to know the unwritten rules of adulthood that you have to guess at every single morning. And if you grew up unmapped, if you grew up without a father to guide your steps or to protect your path, you are not behind. Consider yourself like a pioneer. See, the people you're comparing yourself with were born perhaps on a paved road that their fathers and grandfathers had built for them. You, however, were dropped in the middle of like a thick, dark jungle with nothing but a dull machete and told to keep up. And the fact that you're even still standing here today, still breathing and still trying to figure things out, it isn't a sign of failure. It's a miracle, if you will, of resilience. You are doing the work of 3 generations all at once. And it's time to stop apologizing for how long it takes to clear a path that was never really made for you. Now, to find your way out of this shame, you have to embrace the identity of a Binteger. This is the word I made up that we use here on this platform for someone who is choosing to be whole. And to understand this word, let's think of the word integer in its simplest sense. Integer in math is a whole number. It isn't a piece or a decimal or a fraction. It's a solid, complete number. This is the actual heart of integrity. See, we often think of integrity as just about being good or honest, but true integrity is the internal and external alignment of our values and our actions. It's when the person you are on the inside and the one who feels lost and overwhelmed on that same plane is the exact same person that people see on the outside. Most of us who grew up without a map are experts at being divided, I would say. We show a successful piece of ourselves at work and a stable piece of ourselves maybe at home, while in reality, our struggles stay hidden. We are living as fractions of ourselves. And this division is what makes us feel so far behind. See, we spend so much energy maintaining the performance of being okay that we have no energy left to actually move forward. So becoming a Binteger means that we stop being a collection of pieces and now start being a whole, aligned person. Now, this path to wholeness is also built on a second pillar as well, too, and that is intimacy. See, in our work here, we define intimacy as into-me-see. Into-me-see. It's the courage to let the people who matter in your life look past your competency mask and see the reality of your journey. And for those of us who experience fatherlessness, into-me-see feels like a death sentence. We were taught that if we were seen as weak or lost, we wouldn't survive. And so we hid our lack of a map, and we pretended that we knew where we were going. But the thing is, you can't be whole while you're hiding, and you can't be on time for a life that you're still pretending to live. When you have the integrity to align your inside and your outside, and when you have the intimacy to let others see that alignment, the shame of being behind starts to evaporate. So you aren't a late bloomer. You're just a deep rooter. You are building a foundation that is 10 times stronger than the people on the paved road because you actually know what this ground is made of, right? Now, the feeling of being behind is often just, if you will, a protection gap that was never quite filled. When you have a father who is present and whole, he acts kind of like as a buffer, doesn't he? he takes the hits first and then hands you a map so you don't have to guess. But without that, you spend the first maybe 20 years of your life just learning how not to drown, right? While others were learning how to build a career, you were learning how to regulate your own nervous system. So you aren't failing. You're just busy with the survival chapter while they were already in the thriving chapter. So this realization allows you now to shift from a state of comparison to a state of pioneering. See, a pioneer doesn't compare their speed to someone on a highway. They celebrate every foot of ground that they have had to work hard to gain. And when you choose to be whole, you realize that your timeline is the only one that matters because it's the only one that's real. So as we unpack this sense of being unmapped this month, I know there are some specific doubts perhaps that start to rise up in some of your minds. You might be sitting there, for example, and asking yourself, how do I handle the deep jealousy that I feel when I see people who had a mapped childhood succeeding so easily? It's important here to realize that your feeling isn't just jealousy, it's also grief. You're grieving the fatherhood that you didn't have. The way through this grief is to stop looking at their road and look at how to honor like your own strengths. See, they're successful because they were given a map, right? You're successful despite not having a map. So a Binteger doesn't really need to hate the person on the paved road, but they also don't need to measure themselves by that person. See, you're playing the game on hard mode, and every win that you have is considered like worth double points. So honor that pioneer that is within you. Now, you also might be wondering, what if I've made massive, embarrassing mistakes because I didn't even have a map? How do I stop the shame of my past from keeping me divided? Now, the truth here is, when you're unmapped, you're gonna walk into some holes, right? You might have picked the wrong partner, or made bad financial choices, or reacted in ways that you now regret. But those aren't signs that you're a failure. Those are scout reports. You were exploring a territory with no directions. See, a whole person doesn't hide those mistakes. They actually integrate them. They say, I did that because I was lost, but now I know what the trap is. And so integrity is really about being whole, and that includes owning your entire story. So when you align your past with your present, it stops being a weight and now starts being like a unique map that you're now drawing for yourself. Now, another question that often surfaces is, how do I explain my unmapped timeline to my partner without it sounding like an excuse? This is where the power of intimacy really comes in. There's a huge difference between an excuse and a reality. An excuse is what you say, or it's what you use to stay stuck, basically. A reality is what you use to build a path together. So instead of being defensive, be aligned. Tell your partner, I'm realizing that because I didn't have a map for this, I'm learning things a bit later than others. And I want to be upfront and transparent with you. I want to be whole with you, which means being honest about where I'm still trying to figure things out. That is not a weakness. It's a massive act of integrity. Most partners would much rather have a whole person who is still learning than a perfect looking mask that they actually can't really connect with. Now, I also hear people ask sometimes, is it possible that I'm actually behind because I spend so much of my life just trying to survive? Now, in a literal social sense, maybe you started your career later or didn't hit certain milestones on the standard schedule, right? But in terms of character and resilience, you're likely years ahead of your peers. The person who had a map handed to them doesn't have the grit or the self-awareness that you have had to develop. And so you have a survival intelligence that is priceless. You are doing the foundational work now that many successful people won't touch until they hit like their midlife crisis. You're building on a rock while they're often building on sand. So you aren't late. You're just doing the job thoroughly. One final question that you might be asking is, listen, if I'm a pioneer, when does this jungle end? Like, when do I finally get to that paved road experience? The reality is, the reality of being a Bintegers is really realizing that the relief doesn't come from finding a pre-made road. It comes from the integrity of knowing that you can handle the jungle. The paved road is a myth, I would say, that keeps us divided and searching. But the moment you decide to value your own path and your own progress, the jungle now stops being a threat and starts being your territory. You're the map maker now. You are building a path not just for yourself, but for everyone who is going to follow after you. And that is the highest form of wholeness that you probably experience. Now, the realization that you're not behind is really the key to ending your exhaustion. See, when you stop trying to catch up to a ghost or a standard that was not really built for you in the first place, you can now use your energy to live your real life. You can actually stop the fractional performance and start the whole journey ahead of you. This is the moment where you take that machete and realize that it isn't just a tool for survival. This is a tool now for creation, right? You aren't failing at life. You are pioneering a version of adulthood that is grounded in reality, not just repetition. And so you're doing it without a map, and that makes you like one of the most capable people in the room. So this week, we've kind of traveled through the structural pain of figuring out what manhood and adulthood look like when you're doing it alone. We've looked at the isolation of the roommate's father, right? The suspicion that we might have of leaders and the crushing fatigue of self-parenting ourselves. But identifying the pain is only the first step, though. See, to truly heal, we have to look at how we've been trying to survive this jungle, because some of our survival habits are actually holding us back from the very wholeness that we crave. So as we continue in this second 7 days segment of our series, we're moving into the survival zone now. We're going to start with the most dangerous habit of what it's like to have been unmapped. And that's the fact that you would literally rather die than ask for help. So we're going to explore why "I got this" is perhaps the most expensive thing that you might ever say, and how we can finally break that cycle of that self-imposed exile. But that will be in tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening this far in this episode. Thank you for following along in this series and thinking with me through this. I would love to hear your insights, your questions, your suggestions as we keep on going. I'll see you in tomorrow's episode. Bye for now.